Pull up, grab the fuel nozzle, and get ready to fuel up on trends and strategies to grow your travel center business in this episode of The Truck Stops Here, brought to you by Natso. Now, here are your hosts, Amy Toner and Darren Schulte.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Truck Stops Here. I'm your host, Amy Toner, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Schulte.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Darren. We're listening to that. You are listening to the Truck Stops Here, Natso's podcast. Darren visits literally hundreds of truck stops every year, both visiting them as Natso members, but also doing consulting with them. One of the things I love about Darren is he marries his 30 years of experience in the industry with the ability to look at each location with fresh eyes. He's always writing these thought-provoking blog posts on Natso's website. And he recently wrote one on rolling out the red carpet for truckers that I just really loved. I thought it was so well written and so smart. I thought it was great, Darren.
Thank you.
Why don't you just, today we're going to take a deep dive into it. Why don't you just sort of introduce the topic for people?
Sure. So one of the things I always notice when I go to our travel centers, and it really drove me to write this particular blog, is, we always say that we care about the truck driver. He or she is our core customer. But a lot of times when you actually sit back and look at what we're really doing for the truck driver when he or she rolls up to our property, it'll make you kind of scratch your head. And I'll just kind of give everyone just a quick overview. Let's pretend you're doing an amazing 400,000 gallons on the front side of your property. So certainly there's a lot of cars, and the vast majority of us will have amazing looking fronts, right? There's information about what they do. There's information about the fuel. There's information about the food. They'll often have flowers, and it's very welcoming. So it's literally, we're rolling out the red carpet for that customer. And if you're doing 400,000 gallons a month on an interstate, the location and gas, it's like 40,000 plus customers. So we can understand why you would do that. Well, let's pretend you're doing 1 million gallons in the back.
Right.
And so that's approximately, say, 10,000 truck drivers that are shopping at your location. But then you do the comparison. Often those areas are not as nice. They often can be dirtier. They often don't have flowers. They don't have signage. They don't have the welcoming spirit that the front side it is. And what I'd like to remind folks is, if you happen to be one of those blessed stores and you're doing 1 million gallons, you multiply it by, again, what your average gallon is, the retail, and you might be looking at a comparison of $800,000 in revenue in the front side and 1, 2, 3, 4 million on the backside. So what I want people to challenge folks with is, if you want that customer in the backside, our core customer, to come in and spend money with you, you need to start thinking that you need to welcome them. You need to roll out a red carpet. There should be flowers back there. If you're going to put them in the front, why not in the back? There should be information about the fuel. There should be information about the food opportunities. As you know, I try to talk to at least 2 or 3 drivers a week when I'm in the stores. And I'm shocked so many times when I say, hey, do you know what they offer for food in there? And the driver's like, no, I have no idea, because, we don't do anything to speak to that customer. We don't tell them about our delicious tacos or our pizza or our chicken or our food programs. And often, as when you and I were touring, when you stand there and look in the backside of these travel centers and truck stops, it's usually just blank. Right. And on the front, it's a completely different opposite story, right? And so anyways, there are some folks out there that really have listened to this kind of comment and are doing some really nice stuff. There's operators out there that are putting picnic tables and putting, flowers now in the back, or seating areas for the drivers. They're making sure that the dog parks are easy for the drivers to get to. They're making sure that they've got a what I'd call it, a pump topper program, for lack of better words, notifying the drivers of the features and the benefits. If they have an app, they're not just putting that app on the fuel desk in a little square. They've now got it on their pump toppers or on their pumps. So those are things that I feel very, very strongly about, that will help drive conversion rates. And I've talked about this in the past, and we've written about it, that a lot of the conversion rates, and what I mean by that specifically is, when a driver comes up and fuels, how many of them actually walk inside and spend money?
Right.
And as I shared with you, when I've been asked to do reviews for the stores, when I track drivers, let's say I track 60 to 100 drivers over a 2-day period, less than 28 on average out of 100 that I track are actually physically coming inside and buying something in that store. Normally they walk right in the store, they grab their fuel receipt, they may use the restroom, and they leave. And when I talk to those drivers, just something as simple as, hey, why didn't you buy anything? They're like, I don't even know what they offer here, and I don't have time. I've got to get back on the road.
Right. Versus
those folks that do a really good job of, again, welcoming you there, messaging them properly, you'll notice that their conversion rates are much higher and the drivers know what they offer. So,
I know there's some other things you've talked about, like the ladders next to the pumps that people can climb up on to clean, and this long
squeegees and things. Yeah, both Dawn and I think, we see folks using the ladders, and what we always tell people is you have to be a little bit careful with those ladders because they could be a liability issue.
Okay.
However, if you're going to do a ladder, what Dawn and I say, if that's what your decision is to help the drivers, clean their trucks easier, put in a good ladder. Right. Put in a sturdy ladder, not a ladder that can easily tip over. We recently were doing a review with some folks and we showed them that, hey, these ladders look nice, but when I stepped on it, I could easily pull it over and fall on it.
Right.
So if you're going to do ladders, do it right. If you're going to do squeegees, do them correctly. Don't do metal ones that break that can cut some people's hands. Make them long enough so the drivers can safely and easily wash their windows. So we say things like, spend the money. If you want to do it properly, spend the money, put, wooden poles, for example, that are, 5 to 6 feet long with a brush so they can really clean their windows properly. Or just don't do it at all, because I notice, at least for me, when I go somewhere and they're trying to do something, but they kind of do it half-butt, it really angers me more than not having it.
Okay.
It's kind of like one of those situations when you go into the restroom and you want to dry your hands, but they only have one dryer,
right,
even though there's like 80 people in there, right? Or you go into a restroom and they have one paper towel dispenser and it's empty.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, why even put it up there, right?
Yeah.
I would rather just walk out and wring my hands than think, gosh, you don't have this. And that's kind of how I look at, again, with the cleaning materials. Again, do it, but do it right, is my opinion for the drivers.
I know another thing that you've mentioned is that it takes a lot longer to fuel a truck. So people, they're just like out there longer.
That's another great point.
Yeah.
When we've done reviews at the stores, or even just going out to meet members, we often ask, do you have any idea how long it takes to fuel a truck? And what often happens is the member says, oh yeah, it's 3 to 5 minutes. They're thinking about the actual just process of putting fuel into the tank. Because with a high flow nozzle, it's very, very, very quick. But they've never sat out there and observed the entire practice as you're referencing. So if you happen to be a blessed location where, let's say you have 4 diesel pumps and during your busy times you have 1 or 2 trucks behind the one fueling, if you actually stand there and time it, which we have with stopwatches many times now, I've done this, I'm probably going on a few hundred times now, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for that entire process.
Okay.
Drivers are very professional. They'll pull up forward, get out of their truck, allowing the truck behind them or her to fuel. But what's interesting is that second truck in line now, that first truck in line has already waited 30 minutes.
Right.
So now their fueling process is essentially an hour if you add 30 and 30. If you are blessed, again, if you're in even a busier location, you've got another person in line, that's an hour and a half. So what we're challenging our members to think about, can you imagine taking 30 minutes to fuel your car?
It's like mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And they're told that they can only drive, a certain number of hours a day,
right,
correct? So we haven't thought about through that process. So I'm still stunned to this day, even though members are beginning to doing this, why aren't we becoming the Grubhubs or Uber Eats of the truck world? And what I mean by that is, why aren't we delivering stuff to those drivers? Why aren't we making it either through applications or some sort of communication that they know what we offer, right? Why aren't we,
sending a person out there
to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
Or in this digital world, why wouldn't we have our menu on a phone,
right,
or something like that? And Those folks that are beginning to look at that, beginning to do that, all tell me they're having great success. Because again, imagine what that person is doing in if they're the second truck, an hour. Can you imagine an hour? Yeah. So what's really cool is you could help that driver become more profitable by utilizing that 30 minutes where he or she's having to wait if they were allowed to eat their food. If you delivered somehow, the food to their vehicle, or you found out that he needed an antenna or he needed a pack of smokes or whatever it might be. We have drive-thrus for cars,
right?
But we don't have drive-thrus for trucks. But we could take that same mentality and the fact that they're sitting out there and get them product. I just think that's a lost opportunity, and I do believe that the people that begin really mastering that are going to be incredibly successful and profitable.
I know some of our members have that separate fueling building or truck building. What do you think about that?
So for folks that that are super heavy volume, very much like when we get asked the question about should you have a separate fueling desk, it's something to certainly look at. There are some of the legacy travel centers out there, the Petros and a few of the TAs that have those separate buildings. And I do know in the old days, again, a different time, different place, and wasn't as much competition as there is today, they were incredibly successful because they were built for speed. So the idea, you always hear me talking about speed. Trucks come in, get out. They didn't have to maneuver around cars. That single building, essentially, 800 to maybe 1,200 square feet, had the minimum stuff of the necessities they needed, right? So like the candy bar selection wouldn't have all candy bars under the sun. It might have the top 10 sodas. It had grab and go food, hot food, all stuff that they could eat on the road. And a lot of those locations were incredibly successful. And the numbers that some of those locations would do compared to even today's summer travel centers were stunning. Those little buildings would do as much, if not more, than a lot of travel centers today. So if I was building a travel center today, would I consider it? Potentially. I'd do my feasibility study. I'd get a real good understanding of what my capability is, and then consider doing it. Because the only drawback, of course, you can have additional labor.
Yes.
And you got to have additional land, and also you're going to have, in many cases, another manager on top of that as well. So.
Another thing that I know you've mentioned is if you have a dirty fuel island, then people are just going to dump their trash. You know what I mean? Like you have to set the scene for how you want people to treat your facility. Yeah,
that's kind of what we were talking about just earlier, is that we work really, really hard to make the front of the stores, they call it the forecourt, really inviting and friendly. What are we telling that customer in the back? Like any of us, if we are normally, we would throw trash on the ground, but if we're walking through a park and it's a park that has trash everywhere, we're probably less concerned about dropping that trash. It's no different on the front side. If the front sides are a mess, there's probably people dumping stuff that shouldn't be dumped. So I always tell people, if you want the truck driver, who are amazing and wonderful people and professionals, if you want them to really help you take care of your business, you ought to make sure that, again, that backside is well maintained and clean. Can you imagine going up to your car, you're going to go to your favorite gas station, and every time you touch that nozzle, it was filthy?
I wouldn't. No.
Yeah, after a while, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You'd stop going. And we end up doing that same thing. So, a lot of our members, not a lot, but more than should, still only sell diesel on the backside with the truck drivers for car customers. So can you imagine someone with a $200,000 Mercedes Geolanda wagon going back there, and he wants, he loves coming there, but he stops coming because every time he grabs the diesel pump, he or she is just, their hand is filled with dirt. And again, the professional driver, why we should expect him or her to be satisfied with that is kind of like beyond me.
Can you call out any of our members that are doing this really well?
Yeah. So a couple of our members, I can tell you we have a member in California that's doing some things. I can't say their name because they're top secret.
Okay.
But they have been testing the idea of putting a tablet in the hands of their staff. They got a full-time maintenance staff out there.
Okay.
His pumps are immaculate. He inspects them all the time, but he's having great success. So he's going out there, and while the drivers are stopping with him, he did a survey not too long ago and found out that's the number one reason people stop at his location is not the price of his fuel, but actually because he's super fast.
Okay.
And he's out there, taking orders and asking what the drivers want and getting really good feedback. Corey Bergstresser at Lehigh does full service fueling and says that he's had good success. And the drivers fill the trucks. It allows the drivers to come in, get their food, utilize that time where their truck would be fueling to use the restroom, do those types of things that they need to do, and having good experience from that. And then other stores, we often mention Bobby. Bobby puts flowers everywhere. When you go to his locations, his location at White's is super clean for the drivers, and he's got flowers. He plants like thousands of flowers out there, and it's really welcoming. And again, when you talk to his drivers, those small little touches make a difference. They're like, hey, where can you ever go to a truck stop at the diesel lanes and see nice, beautiful, fresh flowers? And so I think it's awesome.
Awesome. All right. Did we miss anything?
No, but I'd like to end just kind of beating that point home one more day. Mm-hmm. If you're going to get in the travel center industry and you believe that is a future for you, take a hard look at what the driver has to deal with. Make sure you're building travel centers that the trucks get in easy, they can fuel quickly, they can leave easily and quickly. Remember, when a truck leaves, it's not a Maserati. It takes a while to get up to 60 miles an hour. Yeah. So when you build a travel store, keep that in mind. Think that how long does that truck, take to get up? Because that will impact your car business too. Yeah. If trucks take a long time to get up and you're packing them in there with cars are going to get frustrated. And just like a dirty pump where they may not stop, after a while, car customers like, I'm not going to that travel center. It's really nice. The people are great. It's really clean and pretty, but it is really hard to get in and out of.
Right. Especially when you could just go across the street, right?
That's correct. Because that's the case. There'll probably be, in many cases, 2 or 3 other travel centers at your exit. So I'd say that is one. And then number 2, look at the pumps from their view, look at the store from their view, and make sure that side is welcoming them. Petro, those locations, I give a shout out to them, like White's and a lot of the independents that are franchisees in the corporate locations. They're inviting. Look at that backside. What is it saying? What is it referencing? How inviting is it to them? Inviting them to come inside the store. Use that maybe as a model, in fact. And then the last piece is let them know what you do. Let them know you have food. Let them know you have all these goodies. And I think you'll be successful.
All right. Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Truck Stops Here. You can find us online at thetruckstopshere.show. If you have any questions for us to answer on the podcast, I hope you'll reach out to me at editor@natso.com. Thanks for listening.
The Truck Stops Here was brought to you by Natso, the association representing truck stops and travel centers. Visit natso.com for more information. The Truck Stops Here is produced by Natso in collaboration with Human Factor. Producers are Amy Toner and Darren Schulte.